Hi, I'm Mark Shoemaker. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering here at Oak Security Group. And today we're going to talk about the 1CL Grade 1 Heavy-duty Lever Cylindrical Lock. So before you start your installation of the 1CL Heavy-duty lock, you're going to want to know a few things about your application. One of those things is the thickness of your door. 1 3/4 door thickness is standard for commercial grade hardware. You might have a situation where you're a little bit thinner, like an 1 3/8 door, which is very common in residential grade doors, or you might be thicker depending on what kind of special door applications you may have. So you're going to want to know your door thickness. The next thing you're going to want to check is the back set of the door. So the back set is the dimension from the edge of the door to the center of the lock. So in this case, we have a standard commercial 2 3/4 back set. And you might have something that's more residential in nature that would be 2 3/8 back set. Or you might have something that is 3 3/4 or 5-inch back set if you have a special condition on your door. The other thing that you're going to want to look at is the prep in the frame for your strike. So there are basically two sizes. This large strike, which is what we have in our door here, is an ANSI strike. There is also a smaller strike that's a T strike. So you'll need to confirm which strike you want to order with your lock.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Pickett, Director of Operations here at Oak Security Group. Assuming now that you have the correct hardware for your application, we'll look at the prep for your door. Cylindrical prep for grade 1 CL chassis are a 2 1/8 inch hole on the side and a 1 inch hole on the edge of the door. If you have a metal door, this is typically an open prep that will have holes pre-set for you. Most doors will already have some existing prep. If they do not, a couple tools that you will need, either a couple hole saws or spade bits if you're dealing with a wood door, 2 1/8 inch for the chassis body or a 1 inch for the side. Inside of your lock box, you'll find an installation template that, if you were to pre-fold, will give you the locations for where these holes, based on the center line to your strike, where these holes should be drilled for a proper installation, both the chassis body and the through bolt holes. Alternatively, on the market there are many options of jigs that help you accomplish this very well. This particular model, you slide on the edge of your door based on the back set that you have, 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. You'll press this into your door edge, tighten it up, and it will help you for your 1 inch and your 2 1/8 inch preps, holding steady as you drill with the spade bit or with a hole saw. In our case, our door was previously prepped for a knob lock. Knob locks typically do not have through bolt holes. We will need to begin drilling for those through bolt holes. We at Oak offer a through bolt jig. The jig is placed into the hole, flush with the edge of the door on the high bevel side, and then with the door securely placed, you want to take a 5/16 drill bit to drill through these holes. Helpful tip, do not drill all the way through the door, but instead drill halfway on one side, removing the jig, placing it on the other side of the door, so as to not have splintering on the side that you'd go all the way through that may show after your installation. We're going to drill from the outside, making sure that we are flush along the edge. Now, after drilling halfway through, we'll remove the jig, switch it to the other side of the door. We've ensured that we are even, and now we will complete the hole by drilling through on this side. So now we have our 2 through bolt holes and the door prep is complete. Now we are ready for installation. Inside your 1CL box, you'll find a few things. You'll find the instructions, the installation template, and depending on the function of lock you're installing, additional information regarding timing. Next, we will find the ANSI or T strike plates. You will have the screw package that includes both the ANSI screws for the strike plate as well as the smaller screws for the latch plate into the edge of the door. Also, depending on the function of lock you have, there will be a throw member, the through bolts, as well as the keeper pick, and additional instructions of the throw member being installed into the core as well as then into the lock. Next, you will find an inside rose with the inside containing the liner for the chassis. Depending on the function of lock that you have, the liner may include additional information such as these red arrows with an indicator of locked on them. Next, you will find the primary chassis with the outside lever pre-installed on the lock. On your lock, it will include a few primary things. You'll have the outside rose with outside rose liner, as well as the through bolt assembly that engages with that liner. Depending on the function of your lock, the inside lever, if it is a Heartbeam Safety lock, it will include that lever, or alternatively, the respective lever for the function of lock that you have. Last few things that you will have, your latch will be in there, as well as your spanner adjustment wrench. First step in the installation of the lock is to install the latch. On the edge of your door in the 1-inch hole prep, we'll insert our latch. Be ensured that depending on the swing of the door, that the bevel of the latch is facing the strike in the frame. The adjustment there is simply to rotate the latch accordingly. Once you have the latch in the correct orientation, ensuring that the prep allows for the face of the latch to be flush with the face of the door, there will be 2 sets of screws, again, the smaller of which will be for our latch. Taking a Phillips screwdriver, or more recommended, some sort of installation driver. It is not recommended to use a impact driver or something with a lot of torque, as you can actually damage the latch or ruin the prep holes by drilling too far in. Depending on how perfect or imperfect your door prep is, leave your latch screws slightly loose just so that the latch is not completely tight. And then after the chassis is installed properly, you can finish securing those screws. So now that our latch is installed, next we will install the strike on the frame. The strike contains a protective coating that should be removed prior to installation. We will place the strike inside of the prep. We will take our ANSI screws. It is typically recommended for the final touches on these screws, both in the strike plate, in the latch plate, as well as on the chassis, to do the final tightening with a hand tool. Now, with the strike plate as well as the latch plate properly installed, we are ready to begin installation of the lock chassis. From this point on until completion, you want to make sure that the door does not close, for it will be difficult to open again. First step in installing the main chassis of the lock is to check the thickness of your door and adjust the chassis to that appropriate thickness. This door here is set to 1.75 inches is its thickness, so we need to make an adjustment on our chassis to that thickness. For the grade 1 chassis, on the hub of the chassis, there is markings for 1.3 inches as well as 1.75 inches thickness. The adjustment is made by pulling up on the through bolt assembly, rotating the rose and liner to the appropriate line on the hub, placing the through bolt assembly in place. A nice feature of the oak cylindrical chassis is the through bolt assembly is adjustable. So the through bolts themselves can be moved in or out to help accommodate for the prep of those through bolts on the door. So it's recommended to start those in the outer position. With that, with your lever facing in toward the hinges of the door, we can begin the placing of the chassis in the lock. The T fingers on the latch need to be installed into the opening on the chassis like so. So you're accomplishing the same thing while on the door. We'll open our through bolts, place it on the door. It is sometimes helpful to pull the install and jiggle the latch while you're pulling the chassis in. Want to make sure that the latch is properly inserted into the opening on the chassis, and then the chassis is fully inserted on the liner and not on the edge of the rose against the door. From there, now that we are fully seated, we can test the operation. Depending on the function of the lock, that is, we can test the function of the outside lever to make sure that it is engaging the latch properly. From there, we will install the inside liner and rose on the chassis. We'll remove the inside liner as well as the inside rose. The liner threads onto the chassis with the face of the liner against the door so that the edges are protruding away from the door. It is recommended when installing this liner to hand tighten just till it's barely snug, retrieving your spanner wrench, which can be inserted in through one of the two slots on the sides of the chassis, and without over tightening, simply align the hole on the liner with the hole for the through bolts. Once we have made that alignment, we can install the two through bolts. And again, when installing any of the screws or through bolts, be very careful not to overly tighten and do the final touches with a manual screwdriver. Once the through bolts are tightened, again, it's helpful to check the operation, confirming that the latch is still operating smoothly. From there, we will take the inside liner on one side of the rose. You will notice a small cutout. This cutout is made to be installed on the bottom of the lock. This cutout also, after the lock has been installed, is helpful to help pry the rose off of the door, as it is made to be a tight press fit. Once we have our inside rose installed, we can ensure that our outside and inside roses are pressed tight up against the door. The last step of the installation is to install the inside lever. In most applications, the inside lever will simply be inserted over the spindle and press fit in and locked into place, and the lock installation will be complete. In this case, we have the Oak Heartbeam Safety lock, which has additional features that involve timing, along with our classroom security Lockset. If you find need to remove the inside lever or to remove the Lockset as a whole, the inside lever has a keeper hole that, using your keeper pick and placed inside, pressing down, the inside or non-keyed lever can be removed. Removing your rose and liner will allow for the removal of the Lockset as a whole. One thing to notice, that while the non-keyed lever on every lock will contain a keeper hole, the outside or the keyed lever will not. So the removal of this lever from the chassis can be accomplished by using a screwdriver or other tool to compress that same keeper pin, allowing for the removal of that outside lever if needed. But the removal of the outside lever is not needed to remove the entire chassis, as in the same way as we installed it, the outside liner, rose, and lever can be removed once the through bolts have been removed and the inside liner has been taken off.
I'm going to talk about what timing of the lock means in setting the internal mechanism so that it locks and unlocks properly. To do that, you have to work through the figure 8 opening in the keyed lever, and looking down in that figure 8 opening, you'll see a slot with an arrow notched in it. So the timing of this particular lock depends on the hand of the door. So in this scenario, you're standing on the outside of the door, you're looking at the door, and the hinges are on the left, the door opens out. That makes it a left-hand door, and that's going to be important to know when you create the timing for the lock. This is the Oak Heartbeam lock. So the Oak Heartbeam lock is the lock that has the lighted indicator, so that when I lock the lock from the inside, it flashes to assure that you're safe, and it locks the outside lever. So specifically for the Heartbeam lock, the timing will be done first on the keyed side from the outside looking into the figure 8 opening. So this is a small format interchangeable core lock. So looking into the figure 8 opening, you will see a rectangular cutout in a cam with a notch arrow in it. And what we're going to do is we're going to position that arrow on that notch. Because this is a left-hand door, we're going to make sure that that cam notch is facing down. Once we have that notch positioned correctly, we can then, with our small format interchangeable core, we can insert the throw member that you find in your screw package. You insert that into the back of the core, and if you don't remember to do that, the lock will not function properly. So you need to make sure that you insert the throw member in the back of the small format interchangeable core using the control key. So the control key only operates to add, install and remove the interchangeable core. So we're going to put the control key into the core, rotate it to 15 degrees, and then we can insert the core into the lock. Okay, so we've now inserted our small format interchangeable core, and we can test the function by inserting an operating key, not the control key, but an operating key into the core, rotate it 270 degrees to lock, and you can turn it back to the neutral position and remove the key, or you can rotate it 180 degrees in the counterclockwise position to unlock it and return it to the neutral position and remove the key. Now for the inside, because this is a Heartbeam lock, we are also going to time the inside cam in the exact same way. Once we have the cam timed, we can then install the Heartbeam lever. The Heartbeam lever, to install the Heartbeam lever, we're going to rotate that thumb turn 45 degrees, put it over the edge of the lock, and it snaps on. You can hear it click on. So now it should function properly, so that when I rotate it fully, the light flashes, gives indication inside the classroom that the outside lever is indeed locked, and everyone inside the room is safe. To deactivate the light, I can simply rotate it back to the neutral position. Rotating it back to the neutral position does not unlock it. In order to unlock it, I fully rotate it in the clockwise direction, and that unlocks the lock. So now I know that my lock is properly timed with the key, and it's properly timed with the thumb turn. It should be noted that the same timing procedures would also apply to the Oak classroom security function, as well as the Oak traditional classroom function locks. Now that we've completed the installation of the lock, you'll notice that you still have some pieces left over. You have your keeper pick, you have your spanner wrench, and you have a throw member, all in your screw package. These should be kept for future use, should you need it. Regarding the throw member, this is the piece that goes into the back of the small format interchangeable core. You'll want to make sure that that gets installed when you install the interchangeable core. It's important to note that the throw member that came with the lock should be used with that specific lock. There are different throw members for different types of locks, so you want to use specifically the throw member that came with your lock. For an Oak dormitory function lock, they look very similar. The difference for a dormitory lock is the throw member is a little bit longer. So you want to make sure, very important, that you use the proper throw member that came with your lock. So if you have successfully completed installing your lock, it should close properly and open properly. If you find that it does not latch properly, it's probably not a problem with the lock or the installation that you just did. What might be happening is that your door and your frame may not be aligned. Over time, doors, because of their weight, have a tendency to sag in the frame, and when that happens, the latch does not align with the strike so that it properly closes. So if that is the case, you may have to adjust your door or your frame or your hinges, or you may end up having to modify the strike a little bit. If you modify the strike, what we recommend is that you only remove enough material to allow the lock to latch properly when the lock engages the frame. If you'll notice on the latch, there is a little plunger right here. That's called the deadlocking plunger. So the deadlocking plunger actually prevents the latch bolt from being wedged back when it's closed. So the proper operation when the door closes is that the latch bolt engages the strike, but not the plunger. So if you remove too much material, it allows the entire plunger to engage the strike and not just the latch bolt. So you want to make sure that only the latch bolt engages the strike. So don't take out too much material. If you find that you took out too much material, we suggest you buy another strike and try again.
If during the process of the installation of your lock you have any questions or concerns, visit our website at oaksecurity.com or give us a call at 1-877-OSG-LOCK, and our customer service or engineering teams would love to be able to help.